Welcome to Rotary Club Green. Really glad to have you all with us today. Hope your summer's going well. Hope everybody in here gets to have a little quality time with their family in the weeks ahead. So just hope you're having a good summer. Really excited about our program today. We are so fortunate, not just now, but to have had a history of strong leadership in our city, both the administrative leadership and the elected leadership, and have a lot of that represented today. We're really fortunate to have another great leader in Patrick Bowie. So I'm guessing, Sandra, this is a proud day for you. And we're actually going to have an all Bowie program today. We're going to have Sandra to do the invocation. We may ask Dr. Brad to come deliver a baby. Sandra, if you don't mind, would you lead us in the invocation?
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the gift of this day. I pray that blessing, grace, and inspiration will fall on every individual in this room. And now I'm going to ask that we pray together the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray. Please join me. Our Father,
Give us. Thank Thank you, Sandra. If you would, please join me in the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
You may be seated. I'm going to ask Kelsey to come up and introduce our guests. We have the number of them.
Everyone, it is my pleasure to introduce our guests. Please stand when your name is called and remain standing until all names have been introduced. Our first guest is City Council Member Mark Mitchell, guest of Jim Arrington. Next we have Nathan Gaskin, also a City Council Member, guest of Arrington. Then we have Bill Bullock, Assistant City Manager, also guest of Jim Arrington. Next we have Chloe Harrell, guest of John and daughter. Next we have Jerry Winings, guest of Ted Beeson. Next we have Marcy Miles, guest of Ken Miles for the Delivery Department. Next we have Ame Hare, guest of Lee Oldham. Next, and lastly, we have Sherry Cody, guest of Susan Ferguson, and she's with Torrance Cedars and also a member of the City Department. So welcome, everyone.
I just want to say a quick word of thanks. So the nuns are going to be taking over in Kelsey's role, which we really appreciate that. I'm just really grateful for how well Kelsey has represented our guests and how she's plugged in. And the guests that were mentioned, we have at least a half a dozen Rotary prospects in there. So come back anytime. We'd love to have you as members. Love to have you visit the club anytime. Sherry, what's Sherry? So I know Sherry, as I heard secondhand, you're planning on transferring your membership. Is that right? So we'll induct Sherry as a new member. Really excited about having you. I mean, you've visited our club for years, but we're glad to have you joining as a member. So we do have some birthdays and anniversaries to mention. Jerry Fultz had a nice birthday on June 3rd. It's not a big one, but a big one's coming. So congratulations to Jerry. Father Tim, June 7th has a birthday. So happy birthday to both of you guys. We do have some club member anniversaries. Kelsey's been with us 2 years. So just in a short period of time, she's really jumped in and gotten engaged. And then Taylor Merrill has been with us for 41 years. So congratulations on that. So we have some really impressive wedding anniversaries to mention this week. So Susan Ferguson and Charlie have been married for 42 years. So it really speaks to the power of patience on Charlie's standpoint. Congratulations, Susan. Dr. Killebrew got to 56 years. That's a wonderful run. So congratulations. Pat for 61 years. So just congratulations. So I do have a handful of things on behalf of the club to mention to you, some things going on. So we are looking at providing a meal for Branches of Hope, which is the transition center for people who are experiencing homelessness. So I know John Harrell's working on that. We'll have a date for you pretty soon. John, any updates on that? As you have a mouthful?
Not on the date, push for Wednesday, so we can make the last minute push.
Okay.
Have a date, we'll get it out to everybody.
We'll let you all know about that really soon. So Connie is getting close to her year as president, and she's done a lot of work on our annual banquet, so looking forward to celebrating that with you all. She has some great programs lined up. She does, but there's some slots that are still open. So if you have one idea, just one idea, send that to Connie and Steve, because you all know great programs help to make this experience. They help build engagement, grow membership, and just we'd love to hear your ideas. So have one person we'll lift up in prayer. George Bailey is in the hospital in the VA in Atlanta. So anybody have any updates on that? So, I'm sorry.
He texted me yesterday.
Okay.
Walk around.
Okay. Okay, so just, thank you, thank you. And if anybody has any additional updates, let us know and we'll share those with the club. But please keep George in your prayers. We have one quick recognition, so Father Tim, we have a couple of certificates, one for you individually and one for the parishioners of St. Peter's from the West Georgia Community Interact Club. Just their appreciation for all your good work. So thank you. The only upcoming event that I'm aware of is annual banquet next week. So Cheryl, how are we doing on RSVPs?
Great. There's 101 something.
Wow, that's fantastic. So this is really kind of your last chance. If you have an RSVP to Cheryl, please do so. Love to have you. Going to have some great food and fellowship and celebrate the past year that we've had. Just as a reminder, as people ask, and I always miss it. I always do whatever. I miss this. It's business casual. So just so you'll know, it's not country club casual. It's not snappy casual. It's business casual. Anyway, happy dollars. Who has some happy things to share with us? What are some great things going on in the life of the community or in your individual lives? John. All right.
Thank you to everyone who donated blood, either this past drive or any of them in the past. Our goal is still 100 units of blood, celebrating our 100th anniversary. After 3 of 4 drives, we're at 55. I'm going to speak with Holly as soon as she's not quite so busy, as well as Johnny, who's regional, and see what our options are. I think that we should be able to and should feel obligated to be able to get 100 units of blood over a year's time for 4 different drives. The other thing is these are going to remain on the table each week. We've got another 5K in September. Last year, we raised $10,000 that was given to 5 different literacy programs that are all local. We'd like to do better than that this year. If we want to lead, we've got to get. Please consider completing this. Back in touch with you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And John's done an outstanding job of leading our service efforts this year. Thank you. Anybody else? Let's shift over to our program. So I want to invite our new mayor. Let's congratulate our new mayor. I don't think we've had a chance to do that.
Thank y'all.
Well, today it's my pleasure to introduce our new city manager for the city of LaGrange, Patrick Bowie. Patrick began working with the city of LaGrange on August 22nd, 1988 as Assistant Director of Utilities. He was promoted to Director of Utilities in July of 1992. In this capacity, he oversaw the water, sewer, natural gas, electric utility division, as well as customer service. So he's basically been running the city since 1990. Before coming to LaGrange, Bowie was employed as a system engineer at the Potomac Electric Power Company in Bethesda, Maryland. Patrick received his BS in electrical engineering from the University of Florida in 1986 and his MBA from LaGrange College in 1998, and is a licensed professional engineer in the state of Georgia. He has served on the board of the Municipal Electric Authority of Georgia since 1988 and was chairman from 2005 to 2007. Previously, he served on the American Public Gas Association Board of Directors 1999 to 2005, New Ventures Board of Directors 2000 to 2005, Georgia Energy and Industrial Construction Consortium 2013 to 2023, and chairman in 2014 and 2021, and in the Middle Chattahoochee Water Council 2021 to present. Patrick was named city manager for the city of LaGrange February 27, 2024. Patrick is married to Lori Bowie. They have 2 daughters, Sarah and Becca, and 2 grandchildren, Bo and Ellie. Please welcome our city manager, Patrick Booth.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. I see a lot of friendly faces out there, people I've worked with and known for a long time. So I really appreciate you being here, and hopefully you'll learn something about the city maybe you didn't know before. There's an old Yiddish proverb that was made famous by Woody Allen. It said, "Man plans and God laughs," right? I never planned to be a city manager. I was kind of, for the last 35 years running the utility company for the city. I had planned to kind of ride that horse off into the sunset and maybe retire in a few years. And then Meg Kelsey decided she wanted to move back to Noonan, where she's from, with her parents and spend some more time with them, which certainly made sense. And got a call from Mayor Edmondson. He said, "Would you be willing to be the interim city manager?" And I thought for a minute and I said, "Yes, sir, absolutely. I'd be happy to help in any way I can to help through this transition." In the back of my mind, I'm saying, I don't know that I really want to do this job long term. That's not really what I want to do. So I started working, and over the next few weeks, I really enjoyed it. It was actually a lot of fun. I have a great staff of employees at the city that work with me. Department heads are fantastic. Every employee is really concerned about the city. Appreciate Marcy being here. We got a great city council, great mayor. They don't always agree, but they all have the interest of the city at heart. There's not a single councilman that's not really trying to do what's best for their constituency and for the city. So that was very, very important. Just a little background on me. We moved to LaGrange in the Milliken migration back in 1972. Any of the rest of you, anybody here that came down the Milliken migration from South Carolina? Well, there's quite a few families that moved down to LaGrange back at that point in time. I went to the Boyd Junior High School. I didn't know when we moved here I was going to have to go to a school with all boys. They got a lot of participation in band because you got to go to West Side with the girls for first period if you're in band. So a lot of guys signed up for the band. And I have the distinction of being the only department head to have ever been paddled by a city councilman. It was not at the city. It was at Boys Junior High School. I guess I ought to explain that. Somebody lit a firecracker on the school bus. My mom, we rode the school bus. We rode our bikes to school when I was a kid, and nobody would tell who it was. So Mr. Moore proceeded, George Moore, who eventually was on city council, proceeded to paddle every kid as they got off the bus. He said, "Sometimes you have to sacrifice a few sheep to get to the goat." And I will never, ever forget that. But then we had the good news that we were going to get to go to the 9th grade together with the girls at Hill Street School. And then unfortunately, Mr. Driver from Hogansville decided to burn the place down. So we didn't get to go there. They caught him under the porch across the street. Our police force caught him over there. My mom was actually on the jury, I think, along with Wyman Hughes, my future boss, and Jasper Lumpkin, who some of you know, Bobby Lumpkin, his dad. So that was kind of interesting. So I didn't get to go to LHS until later on, but I did finish there. And then it was a matter of where am I going to go to college? I didn't grow up a Gator fan. When all the Run Lindsay Run stuff, I didn't care because I wasn't even a Florida fan back in those days. But we went down there. I think it was a cold winter day here. We got down there. The sun was shining. Palm trees were waving. I think a few girls laying out on the little beach area down there. And so I said, I think this would be a great place to go to college. My mom's a native Floridian, goes back about 7 or 8 generations back. And and fortunately for me, it was where I met my wife, Lori. She was from West Palm Beach, and we met there in the middle in Gainesville, and that turned out pretty well. So I got through school, got a job at Pepco, which was in the DC area, and I worked in the control center at Bethesda. And I was going to have to start traveling. I was going to have to start going to Houston every week. We were working on the control system project. And I really didn't want to do that. It was expensive. I was making $28,000 a year, I think, as a young engineer. And if you're not a lawyer or doctor, no offense to you guys that are lawyers or doctors, but they're about the only people that can afford to live in DC. And so I started looking to come back home and pulled out a magazine because this is in the days of the internet, before the internet rather. So you couldn't look for jobs on the internet. You had to look at magazines and newspapers and that kind of thing. And I saw a little ad that said LaGrange, Georgia was looking for an assistant utility director. I didn't even know that the city of LaGrange had a utility at the time. I had no idea. I grew up here, but I didn't pay the bills. I And I was on the way back for my parents' 25th wedding anniversary, so I'd have been, what, 26, 27, Mom? And she hates that. But I called Terry Hino. Terry Hino was the personnel manager, and I said, hey, I'm gonna be in LaGrange. I'd love to come by and talk to you about the job. And it all worked out great. I interviewed Wyman Hughes. Some of you probably know Wyman, was a member of Rotary Club for years and years. Next to my dad, one of the smartest guys I ever knew. I learned a lot from him. And when he retired, I was able to take the director's job. So it worked out really, really well. Glad to see Jim as the mayor. Had a fantastic working relationship with him on the council, and now as mayor, I'm sure I will. I've actually worked for 7 different mayors now. So any of you think, can you name who those might have been? Anybody know? Starting with Gardner Newman, Chris Joseph, Gene Woodall, Jeff Lucan, Jim Thornton, Mayor Edmondson, and now Jim Harrington. So I'm on my 7th mayor. So makes me feel a little old, but they've all been outstanding in their own ways. They were all very different, but they were all fantastic and did a great job for the city, as do all of our elected officials. So I was very, very fortunate there. So I was hired as the city manager recently. I really appreciate the faith that the council's put in front of me, and I jumped right in at budget time. Meg picked the perfect time to leave. It was right after Noonan finished their budget, and right before we started our budget. So she timed it perfectly. I teased her about that. But as part of the budget process and as part of the city in general, we want the community to understand what we're trying to accomplish, and we want our employees to understand what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that's very important. We talk about mission statements and things like that, and sometimes it's a little cliche, right? But for us, we really want to live and breathe it. Every meeting I ever have with my employees, they get sick out of it. I always would start with our mission statement, what we're trying to do. When we get up to go to work every day, why are we getting up and coming to work? What are we trying to accomplish? So we start with our vision, which we want LaGrange to be a safe, enjoyable, and efficient place to live and work. Would everybody agree that's a pretty noble vision, right? I mean, as a government, safety is the most important thing we do. Supporting our police department, our fire department, that's the #1 function of government. We want it to be enjoyable. Sweetland is actually a department of the city. We want to do things like the Thread and other things like that to make this place an enjoyable place for people to be, to attract young people to come to our community. Natalie Hale's daughter just got married, and she said a lot of those kids came in and they were just amazed at all of the things, from Wild Leap and Nutwood to all the different things, the Thread that we had going on here. They just had no idea that a city our size, we had the neat things that we have. And of course, we have a lot of that to the Callaway Foundation, who's an instrumental in a lot of these things that we do on the enjoyable side of making the city work. We want to be efficient. Maintaining low utility rates is critical. We've always had very competitive rates, from the lowest in the state. That's important. That makes it cheap for you to live here. It makes it cheap for businesses and industry to operate. And that's an important thing in what we do. So it's very, very, very crucial. We don't have property taxes again in this budget. I've not had them since about 94 is when we really got rid of most of them in schools. Solid. The mission is important. That was started back when Tom Hall was the city manager. We want to be satisfying our customers. We want to be responsive and effective in the way that we respond to problems. When you call us, we want to make sure that we lead the infrastructure. I mean, we're an infrastructure business. A lot of what we do in the city is utilities. It's very, very expensive, and we want to make sure that we're leaving the utility system to our next generation better than we found it. So that's important. We want to add value. So each of us as a city employee gets a paycheck, right? If you're paying $1,000, we want to give $1,100 worth of effort. We want to add value in what we do. And then last but not least, the motto. And a lot of this came from Mr. Gaskin and working with Meg. I think his mom used to kind of tell him this: leave things better than you found them. Leave things better than you found them. That's why we have our annual litter pickup, where we get together with all the city employees. We shut down the city. We get out there and we pick up garbage. And we are seeing some improvements. Every year it seems like we get less and less and less. So it is making a difference. So I think that's important. I don't know how much of this you guys can really see. This just shows you kind of the way the city's laid out. A lot of you may not know that. There's each one of those little blue boxes there represents a different kind of operation that the city's involved in. And as city manager, it's impossible for me to be an expert in every one of those blue boxes, right? Whether it's the police department or the fire department, electric's kind of my cup of tea, so I know that for sure. But public works, we have just great department heads that are in charge of each one of those blue boxes and make sure that those areas are covered and handled. Bill handles, he's working directly now with our HR and our planning and zoning function and helps with that. The yellow boxes are those departments that kind of interact, they're internal, like accounting, HR, things like that. Those are the things that we do that support the rest of the city. And then we're unique in that we have, in the little green box over there, we have Sweetland. So we have Brent Gibbs, who's actually a city employee, but works with the Downtown Development Authority too, which is a Sweetland board. So he's got a separate board that kind of directs and handles the things that go on with Sweetland, although our city council does control their budget. Then we've got Natalie Hale with the Thread, and she's a city employee, but also works for the Thread board. And then we've got Kathy Tilley, who handles the Visit LaGrange and does a great job with the tourism side of the business. When we take in hotel motel tax, that doesn't all come to the city to spend. We have to give a large portion of that to what we call a DMO, a direct marketing organization, who has to spend it on advertising and marketing and promoting our community. And so Kathy and her group do a fantastic job with that. So, and then of course we have Jeff Todd, who's our city attorney. He does a great job. We brought him in-house several years ago. I don't know how without him, he used to be a separate firm, but now that he's internally right down the hall, it's great to be able to go over there and just bounce things off of him, talk to him when we have issues. It's amazing. Every day something comes up that seems like we need to go talk to Jeff about. So he's fantastic to have on staff as well. So just a little bit of layout there about how that works. Now, getting into our budget, and I was going to ask you a question. I don't know if anybody saw that. Who has a guess as to what the size of the city's budget is? Any guesses? I don't know if anybody. How much? 168? Close. 163. You must have saw the slide, neighbor. You good guess. 163.7 million. That's at full staff. Unfortunately, particularly in the police department and fire department, I'll mention that again in a minute, we do have vacancies. So if any of you have interest in becoming a police or a fireman, did you bring an application?
No, I say good people.
Yeah, good. Good ones, that's right. But right now, as I said, about 33 vacancies. So we're constantly trying to get those vacancies filled and make sure we have a full staff to do what we need to do. But you'll see two big kind of chunks of that pie stand out, right? And that's the electric system there and the gas system. 40% of our budget is the electric system. And if you take the commodities, just purchasing the gas that we resell to our customers, purchasing the electricity we resell to our customers, I mean, that's $60 million of the total budget. So it kind of skews it a little bit in favor there. But if you look in the red box there, that is the general fund, the general governmental things that almost every city in the United States that they're involved in, right? That's the things like police department, fire department, community development. We have our SPOS fund in there as well. The streets, those kinds of things we do. But then we have these green boxes, which are the enterprise. I use those colors on purpose, right? Red is money going out, green is money coming in. So we got water and sewer, electric, gas. We actually are in the telecom business. We have revenues of over $4 million now with our telecom services, where we provide internet and phone service to businesses all around the community. The reason we got into that was not because we just wanted to make more money. It was because AT&T and other telecom providers didn't want to come to this small town. So we were like, well, our businesses are having to pay too much money. We want to help them. And again, going back to the vision, we want things to be efficient here. So we got in the business so we could save our industries and our commercial customers money. And it's worked out really, really well. The service is great. The prices are great. Then we're also in the sanitation business, of course, and that's almost just trying to break even. You don't make a lot of money in the sanitation business. You're just trying to cover your costs as best you can. And then Sweetland is actually an enterprise. So even though it's kind of break even as well, it is still outside the scope of normal government operations. So that gives you just a general gist, but of our total budget, 69%, almost 70% of our budget is the enterprise functions that the city does that a lot of other cities aren't involved with. So it does drive a lot of what we do. And I think it gives us more of a customer service focus, because when you're in the utility business and you've got customers, you've got customer satisfaction and those kind of things, quality and all those issues you have to deal with that a lot of governments sometimes kind of don't really focus on. So I think it really helps us from that regard. If you break the general fund down, you can see there's also two big chunks of the pie there. That is your police and your fire. So they're the biggest portion of what we do on the general fund side of things. Police department's 38%, fire department's 20% of that general fund. So there are a lot of what we do there. Street department's 7%. So between those three, they make up a big chunk of what we do on the governmental side of things. And where does the money come from to pay all that, right? I said we don't have property taxes like most cities do. Well, utility transfers are 37%. So that pays for 37% of all these governmental services that we provide to the folks that live in our town. And that's an important thing to do, right? Because if we were, say, served by Georgia Power Company, they're going to pay a franchise tax to the general government. So the city certainly ought to, the city's utilities ought to pay an equivalent amount. We also use the accounting and the HR and the other overhead functions of the city, so we should pay a fair share of that. And then, how many of you actually live in the city of LaGrange? Okay. The systems are owned by you. You've invested money in these utility systems, which we've had for over 100 years. You ought to get a return on that investment. So we also are contributing a return to you by offsetting your taxes and paying into that general fund. So it's certainly important that the utilities contribute a fair amount back into the general government. Local option sales tax pays for 21%. That's something that you guys vote on as well. You'd rather pay through a sales tax than pay through a property tax. So the city we actually, even though have no property tax, we have to implement a property tax and then roll it back to account for that local option sales tax. And then hotel motel tax is about 12%. So that's kind of where these revenues are coming from to fund the city government. A few little odds and ends I thought I'd share with you real quick about the police and the fire. We do have 2 new police chiefs, so we've had a lot of turnover in the city, city management particularly here recently. New mayor, new city manager, new police chief, new fire chief. But those guys are doing a great job. We got Garrett Fiveash came from the State Patrol. I think Mark knew him beforehand in his tenure at the State Patrol. He's been a super guy to work with, very, very polite, pleasant, effective, and really wants to do a good job for LaGrange. He's happy to be here and really plugged in really quickly. As I mentioned, we have had some recruitment challenges though in both the police and the fire. They were about 16 positions short. Now I think it's down to 12. They got a couple going to the academy soon. Fire is running about 7 to 8 short. Used to be every little boy wanted to grow up and be a fireman, right? We need some more of that so we can kind of start recruiting some of those young folks. So we're going to try to maybe do some more. Bill's talked about maybe getting into the school system and trying to do some more recruiting at earlier ages. So we have had to restructure the pay in the last 2 years of the police and the fire department and really raise those salaries up to try and attract some more people. The police chief has the police chief has also started to try and get a fresh start by changing the uniforms. They're changing the design of the vehicles, so you'll see them looking a little different out in the community. But wanted to kind of get a fresh start there with his new tenure coming in. I think that it looks really nice. Using more technology. When you don't have the staff, you've got to use other tools and other things to do the work. LPR, those are license plate reader cameras. A lot of people call me, they see these white cameras up, and you can see one kind of on the pole over there on the right. And they think that's a video camera. It's not. It's reading license plates and constantly looking at who's driving around the town. You probably saw we've only had 1 murder so far this year, which is great because by this time last year, I think it was 6 or 7. So we've been fortunate there, but the initial investigation started with a tag reader, and that kind of led them down the road and helped them solve that murder and catch the suspects that were involved in that. So we've also caught some robbery suspects using the LPR, looking at where there's some unusual activity of cars coming in and out that aren't normally in a particular location. So those tools, particularly with AI now and more computerized technology, we're going to see a lot more of that going on in the future. And that really helps to support our law enforcement as they're trying to do their jobs. Then we've got the little drone. That is really, really neat. Mark came to and I think Nathan was there as well. We saw a video demonstration of this new drone technology. It's really fascinating. The guy that was doing the demo was in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was driving a drone that was in Houston, Texas. And he basically clicked on a Google map and said, there's something going on at the grocery store, on Smith Street. He clicked on it on the Google map. The drone launches within 90 seconds. It's hovering at 300 feet and circling that location and video. So it's amazing. You can see it right there on the screen. You can take over and drive it. Eventually they'll be able to hit a car and it'll follow the car. So before the police officer can even get there, you can have a drone on site, and they zoomed in and you could read the license plate from 300 feet up in the air and see exactly what was going on. So we have 2 of those funded in the budget for next year. One they already have, but they're going to integrate it into this new system. And so that's going to really help the police officers. They use them pretty much daily from what I understand. So it's going to be a good help to the law enforcement going forward. On the LaGrange fire side, one thing a lot of people may or may not know is they are first responders from a medical perspective. So even though we have AMR here for EMS, our fire department, they're paramedics. And I believe we have 21 paramedics on staff. They respond to every medical call and sometimes they're there before the ambulance can get there. And they're perfectly capable of stabilizing the patient, doing everything that an ambulance could do except for transport. So transport is the only thing that they don't do regarding medical emergency. So we're real fortunate that we have that because a lot of fire departments do not have that capability to do that. This is a big deal. Have some of you seen, actually, Melissa Robertson, who's the city clerk, pointed out to me today, there was a big full-page article in the paper today that was about Plant Vogtle is now up and running, units 3 and 4. So we were happy to see that. It's been a long road. I was in my 30s when we started this project. My oldest daughter, who now has 2 kids, was in high school. It's been a long, long road. I got some numbers down there at the bottom. 30 megawatts is what the city of LaGrange, if you're a city of LaGrange citizen, you have 30 megawatt interest in that plant, which is 1.35% of the plant. To give you some perspective, LaGrange, with all of our industry and all of our commercial and everything, we're about 110 megawatt system. So you can see about 30 megawatts is a pretty good size of our capacity that we need. So 12% of our electricity going forward is going to be coming from this carbon-free, very efficient generating plant. Now, it wasn't cheap to build. MEAG, which you've heard MEAG mentioned a few times, that is all of the municipal utilities that are in the electric business in the state of Georgia are a member of MEAG Power, which is a state authority, and they do all of the generation and transmission for the cities that are members. And I've been on that board since 1998. Their investment was $7.8 billion in this facility. The original budget was in the $3+ billion, so it more than doubled in price. The great news is that we did many, many things to mitigate that cost, so the unit price didn't go up, but from like 10 to 13.5 cents a kilowatt. Some of the things we did is we had what's called a parent guarantee. So when Westinghouse went bankrupt trying to build this unit, we had a fixed price contract with them. They went bankrupt because they couldn't fulfill the contract. So Toshiba, who was their parent, had to actually give us over $3 billion out of their pocket. We thought Toshiba was going to go bankrupt. Quite frankly, we were a little worried there for a while, but they held it together. And the city of LaGrange's benefit from that was over $50 million. So while our debt in this plan is over $400 billion, it would have been $400 million. It would have been close to $500 million. So that was a big, big help. We also sold a part of our share to Jacksonville Electric Authority and to Power South, which is a group of EMCs down in South Alabama. They'll have that plant for 20 years paying the full cost. We get it back in 20 years and they will pay 2/3 of the debt service. So our citizens don't have to pay that. So those are some of the things that we've done to offset those costs. We also got some really cheap DOE loan guarantees. We use what was called Build America bonds, which is where you can issue taxable debt. But as a municipality, you get a federal subsidy to offset that tax rate to bring it back down to a tax exempt rate. And so that's been very, very helpful. Although we did get caught up in the sequestration that the Congress did a little bit, which took a little bit of those savings away. But all in all, it's helped us, even though the plant doubled in cost. If you'd have told me that 20 years ago, I'd have been, oh no, we were able to really keep the unit price, the kilowatt hours coming out of there at a manageable rate. So we're very, very fortunate there that worked out for us. We also have shares in what's called Plant Wansley. That's a combined cycle unit on the left-hand side. So that's where we burn natural gas. And we have about a 50 megawatt share in that plant. And we're very fortunate because that's really saved us through a lot of the growth that we've had. It has been served from this unit. But we are subject to gas fluctuation. So we do have to really, really pay attention to that. But the good news there is that was a 25-year loan that we took out to pay for that plant. And we're 20 years in. So in 5 years, we're going to see the cost of that plant go down. So as Plant Vogtle costs have gone up, the Plant Wansley costs are going to go down. And then finally, we also own some shares of Plant Share. We own 32 megawatts in that coal plant. The dangerous thing about that one is that the administration is really out to kill coal. As I'm sure if you read the paper much, you've seen there's a pretty big drive by the EPA to shut coal plants down. They just released in April some new rules about carbon dioxide emissions from existing coal plants. And you've got to bring them down by 90% by 2032 or shut the plant down. So we've got some challenges ahead of us in terms of trying to keep our mix of generation. Because what are we going to do to replace that 32 megawatts? That's huge. So those are going to be some challenges that we'll have to face in the coming years. But we're fortunate as a utility to be able to have access to this wide of a portfolio. We've also got some solar coming in and some other things. So we're very, very fortunate there. A couple more things going on I'll mention to you, and then I'll wrap this up. SPLOST, you guys voted for SPLOST, and those SPLOST dollars are to do specific projects. We're limited in what we can use those dollars to exactly what the voters have voted for. One of those things was for parks, and this is a park. Bill's been working heavily on this with Barge Engineering. It's going to be a $6 million project, we hope. $3 million of that coming from a DNR grant, which the community won't have to pay for, and then $3 million will be coming out of SPLOST. The city council has decided to name that park W.T. Edmondson Park after the late Mayor Edmondson at Ridley Lake. So we're excited about that. It'll have a lot of nice amenities, whether it's fishing, kayaking. There's going to be some special needs, playground equipment. So it's going to just be a fantastic park. We hope to rival Granger Park. Granger Park, as you know, is getting more and more use. And hopefully this will help the folks that live on the east side of town, a lot of new apartment complexes and things like that, to have a place to go and play. And then last but not least, we've got a couple of segments of the thread that are going to be coming up. We just accepted bids on one. We're about to go out for bids on the other. One is going to close the final loop, the one on the left there. It's going to be right behind the old Kex plant. So that will finally have a really large loop. So if you're biking and that kind of thing, you'll have some good miles that you can use. And then the other one is going to connect to Ridley Lake. So you can see how it's going to go down by Nutwood on the right-hand side there, loop around the lake. So it'll be a nice view around the lake and then back out. So we're really, really excited about this park and what it's going to do, the thread expansions. And they're, again, trying to make this a really enjoyable and attractive place for you guys to live and work. And I think that is all. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to try and answer them.
What's the size of the technology city? How much is in-source versus outsource?
That's a good question. We actually do it all in-house. And not only do we do the city IT work, we actually have a contract with Troup County, and we manage all of Troup County's IT infrastructure as well, which is great because that way, it's better for both of us. It's more efficient to just have one group doing it all, and it also allows us to have redundancy. So we have servers in the county building, servers in the city building. They can mirror each other back and forth, and that works really well. It also helps us to support the telecom. I mentioned the telecom business that we have that has grown so much. So it allows us to also support the telecom functions that the city does as well. So Alan Slagenhouse, been here a long time. I actually got my MBA at LaGrange College. He was in that class with me. He worked for Hughes, Georgia, and was having to go to California all the time. Just like I didn't want to go to Houston all the time. He didn't like going to California all the time. And so he said, I want a job in LaGrange. He loved this community. And so he does a fantastic job of managing all of that in-house. Recycling was a tough decision for the city. We had the curbside for a while and decided to shut it down. We were losing close to $200,000 a year when you looked at the cost of the cans and the trucks and the people. And unfortunately, the market for recyclables is just not enough to even come close to paying those costs. So we're definitely keeping the recycle center open, which is out there on the Parkway. We talked about maybe trying to move it to a better location. And we get a lot of people out there. I take mine out there every Saturday, and you see a lot of people coming in and out. But it's probably going to be a while before we can really, manage trying to start the curbside back again. It's just expensive.
Kendall?
What's the capacity going to be for power for economic development? So where do you see that capacity break in that at some point we may not be able to add industrial development?
Through MEAG Power, we have what's called projects. So every time they're going to do a generation project, we have the option to participate or not participate. We have project 1, 2, 3, 4, combined cycle project. And right now the city has about 25 megawatts of excess capacity. So we have more generating capacity in some of those plants I showed you than we actually have. So we've got enough to grow with some of the projects we're working with now. They always have neat names. We're working with Project Eagle. That's one of the ones that's, we hope there's going to be an announcement this week or next, I think it's next week from the governor on that project. So that's going to be a real exciting announcement, we hope. But we do have excess capacity right now to handle all the projects in the hopper and then some of the small residential commercial growth going on. As MEAG does the new projects, we'll certainly have to evaluate, and we're constantly projecting out our load and our resources. The only kicker is if Plant Share has to shut down, and then they do what's called an IRP, an integrated resource plan. MEAG does, just like North Power does the same thing. And you're constantly looking at what are your resource options. Solar combined with batteries and natural gas are the two options to replace the coal.
And it was
32 megawatts. Yeah.
in 25 capacity, so we'll
Yeah,
be under-
we would be short, yeah. And what happens though, if you don't, because some cities are short, they don't have enough capacity now for their load. And there's a huge wholesale hourly market, and we buy and sell into that market too, to make money with our excess. And you can go out and buy power, strips, you can go out and buy a 2 or 3 year advance purchase, you can buy hourly. So there's still excess power in the market that you can go out and buy, even if you don't have a generator plant, you can fill it right away. So there's nothing that will stunt the growth.
And sorry to
Yeah,
ask
that's
about
fine.
those, but what about, so when they're shutting down all the coal plants, if they try to do this over a short period of time, then there's not going to be excess capacity anywhere that's going to hit the whole market.
It could definitely impact the whole market pricing for sure. It definitely affect the pricing. I don't anticipate that there'll be a situation where there won't be enough capacity to serve the load, but the pricing is going to be.
Anybody have one more burning question?
Randy?
I know for years we've been trying to get people.
Yes, sir.
It's beginning to feel like we're beginning to get crowded. Are we ready for this large number of people in the apartment buildings? Is the infrastructure going to be able to cover that?
The utility infrastructure is fine. There's no problems there. The transportation infrastructure is a little bit more challenging. Georgia Power, working with the county and other stakeholders, some of you in the room may have been involved in that, just put together a transportation plan that's available. I think it's on the county's website. I'm not sure if it's on the city's or not. I need to check that. But there is a transportation plan that was put together. They hired a consultant that came in and worked with the stakeholders. And so they have identified those areas where we do need to be focusing on transportation improvements. But unfortunately, and DOT is the first one to tell you, transportation lags, it doesn't lead. They wait till there's congestion and then they try to fix it. And that's just the Georgia transportation model, unfortunately. So it's going to be crowded until they get some of these road projects off the map. But we are working with them and letting them know, what we think the needs are and trying to accelerate. I think Hamilton Road, which is finally getting done, was the number one project on the list when I came to work back in 1988. And according to Wyman, it had been on the top of the list even before this. It's finally getting done, so they don't move quickly.
Will Hamilton Road be completed?
It's a 3-year project, Bill. I'm hoping, and they're right on schedule, so I would say probably another 2 years. We're doing all the utility relocation work now, and they're, getting the temporary roads moved so they can come back and do the permanent. But probably another couple of years.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it makes me feel really good about our city government. So, appreciate your service, 35, 36 years, late 80s. I mean, some of us were listening to grunge music and watching Andy Griffith and not doing that. So you've done a lot. We appreciate it. Really fortunate to have you in this role. One thing struck me as you looked at the org chart with the gray and blue and yellow is how many talented people we have in city leadership. I mean, it's really striking and just makes you feel good about our city. And again, we're lucky to have you in this role. And on behalf of those of us who are paddles, we're glad to hear you're going to bring that back. So Polio Plus, we're going to be making a donation in your honor, Polio Plus, which is Rotary International's effort to eradicate polio worldwide. So again, we appreciate you coming to give us some updates. We certainly welcome you in future years to come back. Do have some upcoming programs to tell you about. We won't meet next Wednesday. So we're gonna have an annual banquet on Thursday, so we won't meet next Wednesday. Really interesting program that Randy helped to put together and Jake. So Representative Calvin Smyrie, longtime Georgia legislator, is gonna be here for a conversation with Randy on June 19th. So it should be just somebody who had an interesting career, should be interesting. Then we have Dr. Nathan Call on June 26th from the Marcus Autism Institute. They're doing some really life-changing work and looking forward to hearing from him. We won't have a meeting on July 3rd because of the July 4th holiday. So appreciate you all being here. Hope you have a great rest of the week. We're adjourned.
First round of the program.